So today, my favorite topic, we're going to talk about activity, about movement, about, if you want to call it exercise, not my favorite thing to call it, about just basically like, what do I do every day to move my body? What do I do every day that doesn't involve sitting or lying down? So there's a new physiology that's being studied more and more these days. We have a good 45 years of intense study about what's called exercise physiology, and it's quite an extensive science now, and we know pretty much, well, not all, of course, you never know all you need to know about a science, but we know a lot about exercise physiology. We know a lot about calorie burning. We know a lot about what happens to the body as you become trained or detrained. We pretty much know what happens physiologically in your body when you begin to, quote, exercise. But now what they're starting to study more and more, because there are more of us doing this than exercise, is what's called inactivity physiology. And it is a science, a study, specifically of inactivity, of sedentary lifestyles. Because what we know is that one of the biggest elements of what's going on in the U.S. today, where 7 in 10 Americans are overweight or obese, and this being the cause of pretty much all of our lifestyle diseases that are going on, is that we're not moving. And there's a bunch of reasons why, be it technology, be it the type of jobs we have now that are not labor intensive but more information intensive. But we just don't move like we used to. Just take, for example, what does it take to produce food? In the old days, people worked on farms. Farmers moved their bodies. If you go way back, they had horses who pulled plows. They walked behind the horse with the plow. Along came the first tractors. They started sitting a considerable amount of time more, but still they had to load and unload. They had to do a lot of things still physically. But now a farmer works on a huge area, sits in an air-conditioned, stereoed, really, really comfortable tractor. I don't know if any of you guys ever been in one of these tractors? They are amazing. Amazing. The room inside you can't touch the sides. It's glass all around you except for the roof. It keeps the sun out. It's beautifully climate controlled. They have fabulous stereos. You can get them with videos, so you can watch videos while you're going up and down long rows, plowing rows. Everything is mechanized. So what the farmer does now is he sits in a tractor. And so now what we're seeing is that people who have those kind of jobs where you're sitting for long periods of time are people who have up to double the mortality rate of those of us, or those folks, and I say us because I stand pretty much all day, of people who are standing. So check this example out. Here's a person who works on a cash register. They stand up 8 hours a day and then do whatever it is they do in their life outside of that, but they never, ever exercise. So that's person A. Person B has a desk job. Sits at their desk, more or less, between 6 and 8 hours a day, maybe longer. But they exercise the prescriptive 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, minimum. So they go to the gym, they do their cardiovascular stuff, they may do some strength training, but they do their 30 minutes without fail. Who's going to live longer? The person who stands and never exercises. This person, because of the fact that they sit, and I'll tell you a little bit, I'm not going to get into the heavy physiology, but the person who sits, even though they follow all of the government recommendations for activity or exercise, has a higher mortality risk than the person who stands all day and never, ever performs exercise. Why does that happen? What they begin to find out is that as you sit in a chair, within the first few minutes of sitting down. There's an enzyme that's in your bloodstream that goes around and collects fat and takes it to be broken down and used as energy. So right now, as I'm standing, this enzyme is at work. It's keeping all of the muscles in my frame fed. Yeah. Has everybody signed already, the paper? So this enzyme is at work. And it's keeping all the muscles, when I'm moving my arms, it's keeping my frame upright. It's keeping me balanced. Every time I take a step, I'm using this enzyme. As I sit down, between 1 and 5 minutes, the enzyme literally disappears from your bloodstream. It stops. So what happens to all the fat that's in your bloodstream waiting to be used? It starts being stored. So we're not using it. After a certain period of time, sugar, first of all, we'll go with the sugar thing, turns into a triglyceride. The triglycerides eventually will be stored as fat because we're just not using them. And they didn't even know this enzyme was around until probably around the 80s when they discovered it, but they didn't really pay much attention to it. But now, because of what's going on in the U.S. today in particular, they've discovered that sitting is hazardous to your health, period. The first time they ever talked about it, they were looking at bus drivers in London. There was the guy those double-decker buses who took the tickets, and then there was a guy who drove. And what they found was the guys who were driving were having heart attacks, were diabetic, had high blood pressure, and were having strokes so much more often at the same age than the guys who were taking tickets. And they're like, wow. And they just knew that. That's all they knew, but they didn't know why. They couldn't figure out why. And now they know. So you don't have to know like all of the hardcore physiology of this, but what you do know is that as you sit, the enzyme disappears and you start storing fat. As you stand up, as you move around, you begin to use that you produce the enzyme again, and you begin to use free-flowing fat and fat stores if there's nothing in your bloodstream. So what does all of that mean? It means that we got to get out of our chairs. We've got to. There are people now designing desks that you stand at, that you can both stand at and do your computer work and whatever it is you do while you're sitting, and you can also lower it if you need to sit down. They're adjustable. I mean, it's going to be, you guys are going to see it. Anybody who has a job where you sit 6 to 8 hours a day, you're going to see it happening. What else can that mean? Think of the things that we do. We get up in the morning, take a shower, do whatever we have to do. Hopefully you sit down and have breakfast because it's the most important meal of the day. And if you want to lose weight, you can never lose weight without eating breakfast. So hopefully you sit down, you have breakfast. You get up, you go, you get in your car, you sit down. You sit down in your car for what, 20 minutes in San Antonio? You can't get anywhere in less than 20 minutes. Get out of your car, park as close as you can to the front door. Go inside to work, get in your office, and you sit down. You sit down for 2 hours or so. Maybe you have to go to the restroom or you go get a coffee, which dehydrates you, further slows your metabolism. And then you go back and you sit down until lunchtime. You get up. You either go to the lunchroom and sit down for lunch, or you go get in your car and you drive and you go have lunch. Come back to work, same thing in the afternoon. You leave, you get in your car, you got another 20 minutes of sitting, you get home. Maybe you go through the drive-thru to get your dinner. You get home, within a few minutes you're sitting down having dinner. After you're done with dinner, what do? Wash dishes. You wash dishes, or you put them in the dishwasher and you go sit down and watch TV. Every moment that you're sitting, that enzyme disappears and you're storing fat from the foods that you've eaten previously that day. So what kinds of things could we do on a daily basis that would get us up out of our chairs?
Walk a dog.
Do what?
Walk a dog.
Walk a dog? Perfect example. Walk your dog. My neighborhood, I think pretty much everybody has a dog. They all live in the backyard. Never seen them. Never seen them. I hear them barking, but I never see them. Nobody walks dogs. You can walk your dog. You can wash your own car. Stop going through a drive-through or sitting on the bench while it goes through that thing and you watch it go by. Don't go through a drive-through pharmacy window. Don't go through the drive-through. If you're going to go have fast food, get out of your car and go inside. Order to go. Park far away. You guys could park all the way across the street over there, and it would make a difference. Instead of using email to tell somebody next door to you something you have to say, get up and go next door. Make eye contact. It's a much better way of communicating. Cell phones are the same way. You call somebody on the other end of the warehouse instead of walking over there, making that trip. What else can we do? We can wash our dishes. We can cook meals. You got to stand up to cook meals. You can vacuum your own house instead of hiring somebody else to do it or just not doing it. You could sweep. You could mow your lawn. Even better, you can get one of those lawnmowers that you actually push instead of the ones that have wheels. Yeah. What else? Anything? Can you guys help me with that? Things that you could do that would get you out of your chair. Turn off the TV. Huge. Huge. Turn off the television. Water your plants. Talk to your neighbors. Go for a walk with your kids or your parents. Meet your neighbors. What else? Man, I had a class, they came up with some good stuff that I never thought about. When I left the U.S. 7 years ago, I went to Spain, and a little while later, I bought a farm. When I left the U.S., I was running triathlons, and I would usually do 2 or 3 marathons a year. I was a personal trainer. I worked every day out in the world with my clients, running all the time. I went to Spain, I bought a farm, I stopped working out, and I lost 12 pounds. Ate like a horse. But from the moment I got out of bed in the morning until the moment I fell in bed at night, I never stopped moving. And in just that, I never exercised. Didn't do it. For 6 years, I did hardly anything except work on my farm. And boom, the weight just fell off. Just from moving, just from standing up, from fidgeting, throwing out paper in your office. Anything that requires that you not be sitting for any length of time. Does anybody in here feel like standing up? You're welcome to. You are welcome to. Because this class would better serve us if we all stood up. If we all stood up and did the class standing. How many of you guys work sitting down all day long? 1, 2.
I'm in and out of the car, but I sit down half of the time.
But when you're in the car?
I drive all day.
You drive all day? Anybody else in here a driver? No? What do you do when you get home if you don't sit down all day at work? You sit down, walk the dogs.